But more specifically, it relates to this concept that I describe as strategic openness, which is not blindly saying yes to any old opportunity that comes your way, but really, having a framework for evaluating these opportunities so you can make an informed decision on whether to accept it or not. A lot of the time, opportunities that may superficially seem like they're not a great idea initially, upon further reflection, actually end up becoming some of the decisions that change our lives the most.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am thrilled to have Shane Tepper on the show today, particularly because he is just launching a brand new company. And I love that because we can talk about so many things, and being at kind of the starting stage of this new organization and being able to really dive into that is really fun for me to share with all of my listeners on the podcast. So Shane, thank you for being here on Your Brand Amplified.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Let's talk about how you got to today, because you are an expert at helping LLMs in search. Obviously, that's something we're all talking about. Is search dead? Is it still relevant? I've seen so many case studies of people finding new clients through LLMs, and that is your area of expertise. But that hasn't been your area of expertise for 20 years, probably, because we started out with Google and search. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the journey into, how we got here today.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. It's certainly an emerging area, search and of marketing more broadly. SEO, most people know what that is. That's optimizing online content for discovery in traditional organic search. Google, of course, being the major player, but Bing as well. GEO, generative engine optimization, is sort of the new game in town. This certainly doesn't mean traditional search is dead. Google still accounts for the majority of searches, certainly, but we're seeing a much more high intent type of buyer move to LLMs like Claude, like ChatGPT, for brand comparison and discovery, brand discovery and comparison. And there's a good reason for that. Whereas a traditional Google search will be comprised of 3 to 7 keywords. You get results surfaced to you, and you essentially sift through a bunch of potentially irrelevant blue links. In an LLM search, you can be far more specific with your query, far longer searches, a lot more context about your particular situation. You can be like, I'm a CMO managing a team of 50, and we need an email marketing, an email automation tool that integrates with our CRM well. And then you get, instead of links surfaced to you, you get highly relevant content surfaced directly to you within the search. And then you can ask follow-up questions and sort of narrow down and drill down on exactly what it is you're looking for. You can provide, additional pain points that you're having, additional product features that you'd like. And it's just a far better way to do brand research and compare solutions and products.
It's so funny because I do this myself, and I also use it with my grad students at USC, where I'll have them for digital media compare, put in what you're looking for your company and ask your LLM of choice what would be a good tech stack for your marketing needs. And then I say, are these relevant to you? Are there ones that you already use that you don't see listed? And when you tested these out, how did you find them? And I think it's really fun to me to play around with it. But I know most people they want to get the information as fast as they can and then be able to go research or say yes, buy, or whatever the case may be.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, I hear so much about Google, YouTube search, TikTok search, different ways that people are searching now, depending on generations and psychographic behavior. So while you're saying, Bing, Google still have the lion's share, I think people also are getting tired of AI overviews. And how many things do you have to look at before you get to the actual answers that you're trying to find, or companies, and not just trying to sift through links and see if they're actually valid, and the AI overviews or all of the sponsored ads.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly right. It's interesting as well. You mentioned, you know, s- traditional search potentially being dead. That's a question that people are asking nowadays. I can say with certainty that traditional search is not dead, primarily because, in large part, because ChatGPT uses an API for its web search. It uses a hybrid model that combines both Bing and Google in terms of how it browses index pages. But the thing is, the criteria that these models use, that ChatGPT and other models use, are fundamentally different than the criteria that Google or Bing uses to determine relevance. We've found that the vast majority of citations that are pulled into LLMs come from the 20th search page of Google or beyond. So credibility, reliability, authority is being determined of the source, which is cited which is pulled into the LLM and presented to the user. Is being that the authority of those sources are being evaluated differently. We're also seeing that off-page sources, by which I mean not pages that are not owned by your brand, are considered to be a lot more authoritative in many cases than your own brand's domain, than URLs with your own brand's domain. Any brand can tout how great they are, how their solution is first in class or industry leading, but when a third party affirms that, that tends to carry a lot more weight.
So would this be Reddit, Quora, Trustpilot,
That's
any
exactly
place where there are reviews? Mhm.
Yeah, Reddit, Quora, G2, Wikipedia, yes, forums and third party sites like that.
So that leads me into a question that's related, but also I would love to learn, because we look at Quora, we look at Reddit as authentic sources, everything else that you named. But if companies know that that's a place where people are speaking about them authentically and they want to capture that, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what are the ethical concerns of an organization kind of seeding some of the conversation? Is that happening?
Certainly. Yeah. These sites, Reddit in particular, the users of these sites have, very sensitive bullshit meters, let's say, right? If a brand attempts to engage with a community, a subreddit, in a way that they feel is inauthentic or pandering or too salesy, that content gets downvoted and that user gets flamed. So what we've seen is that, yes, there are, and you mentioned an interesting thing as well. A lot of the terms of service of Reddit, right, forbid, a single user, multiple accounts, that sort of thing, trying to game Reddit in that way. So I would recommend that for any brand, you create one account, you be very forthright about your association with that company, with that brand, and you genuinely you try and interact in these conversations in a very authentic way, a very helpful way. And that tends to be the best way to approach that. And you maintain the authenticity, you maintain credibility, and you provide helpful responses, and that tends to engender goodwill among the members of the
Hmm,
particular community that you're engaging with.
interesting. And the other comment that you made, that based on your research, right? Google page 20.
Yes.
Now, this is a huge flip because we always hear you want to be on Google page one, you want to have high domain authority. That's the most important thing for discoverability and awareness. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. It just goes back to the fact that, whatever criteria these models are using to decide what is valuable, relevant, credible, authoritative, etc., information to surface to a user for a given query is different. I was watching a webinar recently featuring Josh Bliscoe. He's the head of research at Profound, which is an AEO, an answer engine optimization company. And he gave this example that I found fascinating. He said that for a very long time, when queries were asked pertaining to fast food burgers, the top citation source was some random guy's blog, like Bob's Burger Blog or something like that. Because he had so thoroughly and exhaustively researched different burgers, and he would talk about different qualities of the burger, the size of the patty, the quality of the bun. And this, for whatever reason, ChatGPT determined that this was the source. This was
Wow.
the source, the premier source for fast food burger evaluation. So it really is about helpfulness, thoroughness, and there are a lot of other things you can do as well in terms of how you structure the content, the type of content that you create to make your content more likely to be pulled into LLMs and surfaced to users. FAQs, listicles, comparative pieces of content tend to perform really well. And then on the technical side, your meta descriptions, something called spoiling the content, which means kind of giving a very specific overview of what the content creates within that meta description, as opposed to something more teasery-ish, is important. The types of slugs that you use on your URLs and your domains, should be very relevant to and very descriptive of the content that is on that page. So there are just a number of things you can do, both on the technical side and on the on page within the content itself, to make your content more likely to be cited. Another thing is each section of the text should be independently extractable, right? They should be self-contained, contain all the context to answer whatever topic is being discussed there. No, as we referenced above, type of thing, but yeah, extractable chunks of text that fully contain all the context that is required, for an LLM to understand what it is. That's another thing that brands can do to make their content more likely to be cited.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've given us so much great information. I would say, I've had different people come on and talk about SEO and search and what's going on now, but I think have been far more thorough than anybody. So thank you for that.
I'm glad I can help.
Yeah. So I've also heard, because I work with a lot of people who want to be thought leaders outside of their organization, right? And so one of the things that I've heard about for that is if you Google yourself, I guess this would not be the appropriate word. If you search for yourself on LLMs, see what comes up. And a lot of times it'll pull information from different websites that may or may not be accurate. So for individuals who are brands or who, have a role in a brand, but also need to be seen on their own, I've heard that we all need to have our own websites so that we can have all of the information that is truly important about us, all the right links and all that, so that the LLMs can pull that in. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, yeah. Your own domain becomes the canonical source of information about you, particularly if it's, like I said, structured well, both from a technical standpoint and from an on-page standpoint, and particularly if you update the content often. LLMs tend to like content that's created more recently. They have a recency bias, so that's another important factor as well. And then for outside of that, again, if you are a thought leader and you're doing podcasts, or you're being quoted in publications, industry publications, or other media, those also are very important. For me in particular, I have a film industry background. My IMDb page gets cited very often. That's IMDb. It's also one of the oldest online pieces of content that I have that mention me. One of the most, I guess it has a high authority because of its age. And then other blogging platforms like Medium also get cited frequently. My LinkedIn posts as well. So it's really about creating an ecosystem of high value content that, accurately describe who you are, what you do, provide a lot of context about your career and life, whatever sorts of signals you want to be known as, right? Whatever you want your area of expertise, your domain to, be cited. You want to kind of communicate that in these various places, and then they'll be much more likely to, the LMs will be more likely to associate with those things. I'm having a little bit of trouble myself right now. Not a ton, but there is actually another Shane Tepper out there who is a content creator. And on occasion, Gemini in particular seems to think that I'm this guy in San Antonio. It's one of the main reasons I use my middle initial. It's the main reason I use my middle initial is
Interesting.
to distinguish me from the other Shane Tepper, who I'm sure is a wonderful person, but gets confused with me on LLM search.
Yeah. There is another Annika Jackson in LA who is a professor, totally different, I think in the community college system, LA, CC. And I think there's another one who is a track star. So
Right. So
hope
this was a personal problem
that one
that you wanted help solving.
we
Yes,
shouldn't
you have
have any.
the same issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we have too much overlap, but every once in a while it'll pull something over. And I didn't even talk to you about your background in film and television before you moved into copywriting, SEO, and everything else. What was that transition from? What sparked that?
Yeah, sure. No, so I had the great fortune of graduating into one of the worst economies in decades back in 2009. Right around this time, the state of Georgia, where I'm based in
Mhm.
Atlanta, had implemented a very generous tax incentives program to attract productions to the state. And I'd always been a big cinephile, geek out over
Mm.
actors and directors and cinematographers and collaborations between those people. So I thought I'd work in this industry that was growing in my own backyard. So I worked in film for several years. I worked in a technical position in the camera department as a camera assistant. So I wasn't, the creative force behind any of the projects that I was working on. And I wanted to be the creative force. I wanted to, fulfill my own creative visions as opposed to helping others fulfill theirs, which was fine for a period of time, but it became something that just something that I wanted to do. So I started a video production company that I ran for several years. The company sort of developed in a way just organically that we were doing primarily internally facing sort of corporate type content, which is great. You can absolutely build a viable business based on that need, and we certainly did. But I found myself wanting to do more consumer facing stuff, more publicly facing stuff. So I ended up selling my half the business back to my business partner, and I transitioned into ad copywriting, the agency world. Did that for another few years, and then was headhunted by a fintech company. And ever since then, I've been working in house at technology companies. And my most recent role prior to founding Revelation was director of content marketing for an identity verification company. And I had a great manager there, the CMO of the company. He had this mentality that because the product that we were selling, the product that the company was selling was AI powered, he wanted our marketing to be AI powered as well. So he was very open minded when it came to using generative AI tools to enhance our marketing. And essentially, he had this policy where if you could, make a good business case to get a subscription for a generative AI, product, he would sign up for it. So I became pretty adept at using a bunch of different tools. Obviously LLMs, but also image and video and audio generative tools. And then I started reading a bit about GEO and brands wanting to appear in LLM searches. As I mentioned earlier, this is a much higher intent type of buyer who's using an LLM, up to 6 times more likely to convert. We're seeing they're worth about 4.4 times as much as a searcher on traditional search. And I had brands approaching me, and I had agency partners approaching me and saying, we want to appear on LLM, or we have clients who want to appear on LLM search. So I just kind of, really, really liked the idea of solving that problem. So it kind of dove into that head first. But, the through line for all of this stuff, it kind of, it seems circuitous, this career path I've been on, but, the common thread is storytelling. And, marketing is really just telling stories on behalf of a brand, right? And I like the problem solving aspect of it too. I like the measurability aspect of it, and tying particular marketing activities to particular KPIs, and hopefully watching those KPIs go up, watching those clicks go up, the traffic, the web traffic go up. So that's why I ended up where I am today.
Nice. And let's talk about Revelation. Why was this time, the right time for you to launch a business?
Sure. Yeah. I think GEO and LLM search is still in its very, very early stages. Search still only accounts for under 1% of total search volume. So
Really?
it's tiny. It's tiny, but it is growing at a rate of 165 times that of organic search. And again, like I said, it's a very tech savvy, very high intent, very valuable type of buyer who is going to LLMs to do this. And I think, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, it's just the fact that you can so much more quickly get so much more relevant information via LLM search. I think we're going to see a lot more adoption of LLMs for brand discovery and comparison purposes. But it's still, there are already some big players in the industry. There are companies that have raised tens of millions of dollars to solve this problem of LLM visibility, but there's still, tons of wide open space for other differentiated products to come in. And, I saw an opportunity there. And that's why I started Revelation. Something that we are doing that not a lot of other companies are doing is this notion of actionable narrative intelligence. So let me break that down a little bit. So how a majority of these platforms work, how majority of these GEO platforms work is they will either generate a set of queries that are representative of what real customers are searching for in LLMs, or you can upload your own queries that you believe are representative of what actual customers are typing. And then they'll run those queries through, your LLMs of choice. And then they'll get the results. They'll get the results and then they'll kind of slice and dice that data and show you, top citation sources. They'll show you, what your visibility level is compared to your competitors. If you're only showing up in 6% of queries versus 20% for your top competitors, that's a problem for you and you need to become more visible. They do things like sentiment analysis as well. To the extent that you are showing up, are people saying good things about you or bad things about you, or are they just acknowledging you as a product or service in the industry? So then, right, you see how you're doing. If you're not doing well, the next question invariably is, okay, how do we do better? How do we become more visible on these platforms? So what Revelation is doing is we, look at this large amount of data, a large amount of response data, and we try and identify algorithmically narrative gaps, opportunities for your brand to own a particular part of the narrative that's happening in your industry. For example, let's say competitor A, they're being cited constantly as the fastest, solution in your industry. And competitor B might be the most compliant. But there's no one owning the ease of implementation narrative, for instance, right? That is white space that you can own. And we use a very sophisticated methodology to identify exactly where those gaps and opportunities are. And then beyond that, we create essentially a content campaign for you to implement both on page and off page, a series of concerted, actions you can take content wise that will help your visibility, help you improve your visibility. Other platforms, might offer some sort of actionable recommendation, but they're typically disjointed, like write this blog post or like do a partnership piece with this company, versus like a very strategic, concerted sort of campaign level, type of action to improve visibility. And then furthermore, we are tying that back to ROI as well. We have a methodology for converting, identifying what percentage of your traffic, what percentage increase in your traffic can be attributable to your increased visibility. We tie that to leads, which we tie to sales qualified leads, which we tie to conversions, which we can associate with, an average deal size. And we can get a pretty close approximation of the pipeline impact of your visibility increase. So this is, it represents, I think, something that the industry badly needs, but isn't being adequately offered at this point. And it's a really exciting place to be.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm looking at your website on my other screen where you can check your visibility. Since you haven't, I mean, Revelation, as of this recording, isn't on. I think is it the stealth
We're in
founder?
stealth mode. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
in stealth mode.
You're in stealth mode. So it's not listed on your website. I mean, your name redirects to your personal brand. So talk to us about what beta testing you've been doing, what testing you've been doing with clients. Do you already have a whole bunch of clients onboarded? Or is this kind of you're making big announcements very soon?
Sure. Kind of a combination of all of those. We do have some pilots, clients that we're working with. We're capturing data and, validating our product and the methodologies we have in place to measure all the different things that I've spoken about. We are about to raise some money as well. And, at which time we'll be full steam ahead, launching ourselves in earnest as a brand and as a company. And we're very excited to get underway with all of that.
Amazing. And are you going to be working with a wide variety of organizations, or do you have a special niche?
Enterprise B2B SaaS for the most part, and mid-market and enterprise B2B SaaS companies, we think are going to be our sweet spot. Those are the clients that we've worked with so far, and we think those are the clients that we think we could do the most to help from a visibility standpoint on LLM. So that subject to change depending on what the market dictates, but for now we think that's going to be our sweet spot.
Yeah, I would make the argument for small to medium-sized businesses. SMBs make up, over 8 million businesses in the United States and need a lot of help in these areas that they're not getting. So I'll just throw that out there for your next iteration or when you decide to expand. Now, I really want to dive into your book. So you have a book, Dwelling in a Place of Yes. Talk to us.
Sure. Yeah. So earlier this year, I was sitting around with a couple of friends, and we were kind of joking around about kind of modern day therapy speak, setting an intention and holding space, and those sorts of phrases. Which those are valuable things. I think they sound kind of fuzzy and woo woo. But I think there is value to those things. Setting a boundary, right? Like knowing what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. These are important things in life, to maintain, your mental well-being and to maintain a sense of fulfillment. But, we were just kind of noodling on like funny phrases. And I said, dwelling in a place of yes. I said, I'm trying to dwell in a place of yes in this season, right? And, it was funny, but I was like, I think there might be something here to dwelling in a place of yes. And, this was, of course, I was like fully immersed in generative AI world at this point. So I wondered if I could write a book, on this concept of dwelling in a place of yes, using generative AI tools. And I sort of threw myself into this project, and within a week I had what I think is a pretty serviceable manuscript. Dwelling in a place of yes refers to, having an open mindset, but more specifically, it relates to this concept that I describe as strategic openness, which is not blindly saying yes to any old opportunity that comes your way, but really, having a framework for evaluating these opportunities so you can make an informed decision on whether to accept it or not. A lot of the time, opportunities that may superficially seem like they're not a great idea initially, upon further reflection, actually end up becoming some of the decisions that change our lives the most.
Oh, yeah. That's so true. The unknowns, the things that we didn't know we were going to further explore and find out. I mean, I certainly never thought that I would be podcasting full time, but here we are, and I love
Because
it.
you said yes. It's because you strategically said yes.
Yeah,
You dwelled in a place of yes.
this is very true. This is true. So you have the book. It's available online. Have you done any marketing towards it, or did you just put it out to see kind of what would
No,
happen?
I mean, minimal. I've made a handful of posts on LinkedIn over the past few months, kind of promoting the book, not just promoting the book, but honestly, I think the most interesting part about the book is the way that I wrote it. I used an LLM. I used Claude to write it. I trained Claude on several samples of my natural writing so it could approximate my style. I fed it, several anecdotes from my own life and career to reference. I wanted the book to also be heavily backed by legitimate psychological insights. So a lot of studies, a lot of psychological studies. I incorporated references to studies as well as market research. And I think I ended up with something that is highly readable, is data backed, and hopefully, and also is infused with stories from my own life, and is also hopefully helpful to the 16 people who have maybe read it at this point. The cover art was also designed with AI. I used ChatGPT's image engine to create it. And yeah, I think, certainly some people are going to be skeptical about it, right? Like, as a former copywriter, I found that, you know, pure creative types tend to not be super thrilled about AI's, ever encroaching presence in pretty much every aspect of our lives, particularly in creative domains, and they're not without their skepticism is not without warrant, right? A lot of these models have been trained on real artists' output, their images, their words, they don't get credit for it. And then, their styles are emulated in LLMs, and I understand absolutely why that is very problematic. And I agree to a large extent. The thing is, this technology is here. People are using it. They're not going to stop using it. In fact, quite the opposite. So I kind of wanted to see if I could use this technology to help me from an efficiency perspective, while also hopefully maintaining my authentic voice, my authentic style. I wanted to represent my life in an authentic, meaningful way. And I guess, it's really up to the reader to, to determine if I succeeded or not. But it was something that I wanted to experiment with, and it turned out pretty well. I think I'm very, I think it needs another editing pass, probably by a professional editor. But I think it's a pretty solid, this, particularly for the category of personal development and self help. I think it's a pretty decent, piece
Yeah.
of work.
Yeah. Well, I do the same thing, and I love Claude for this, but I give a lot of talks and workshops. So I'll put in all of the previous ones I've done and anything else I've done, and then say, okay, I want it to have this slant. This is the audience. Can you take what I've already written and just fine tune it and ask me questions about where do I need to add more storytelling, or where do I need examples that will resonate with this audience? And that cuts down on so much research time. It's amazing. And it's still my words. It's just with a little
It's your
assist,
thinking
right?
partner. Exactly. It becomes your thinking partner, your
Yeah.
collaborator.
And when it comes to SEO for your book, did you make sure that you had the right words in for searchability and visibility?
No, I didn't. I didn't approach with that with SEO in mind. I probably should have. Yeah, I was primarily focused on authenticity and helpfulness. Writing something that that could be meaningful to someone.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to give it a read and
I'll
review.
send you a copy on the
Okay.
house.
Amazing. Thank you, Shane. This has been a really fun conversation. I know you can go to revelationhq.com. You can see if you're visible. Now, I know you're looking at the enterprise audience. Most of my listeners are SMBs. I'm still going to take this
You're,
visibility
you're
test.
welcome. Yeah, no, absolutely. We can help any type of business, B2B primarily. That's the main thing is B2B. We're working on a consumer, a B2C version of the product as well. But for now, yeah, we have a B2B focus. But yeah, SMBs, absolutely get in touch. We'd love to help you out. Love to help you be the answer for when people ask a query that for which your business should be the answer. We'd love to make you that answer.
Amazing. Now, Shane, I always ask, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, poem, family motto, words that continue to inspire you every day?
I would say something that's inspiring to me, something that I strive for. How about that? Something that sort of is my guiding light. I think being your credibility and your reputation, I think, are the most important thing that you have. Right? That's something that you take with you wherever you go in a professional context and in a personal context. It takes, and I'm sure you've heard some variation of this before, but it takes years, decades to build up a reputation, and minutes or seconds to destroy one. I think this relates very closely to what we've been talking about. Models cite credible, authoritative sources, and on the human side of things, I want to be a credible, authoritative, reputable source on all of the things that I write and talk about. So, I think in a world where credibility and authenticity might seem to be losing their value, I think it's important to remember that those things still are important and still worth fighting for and still worth prioritizing in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And we will, of course, have the link to Revelation in the show notes. And if you're okay, link your name to your LinkedIn profile if people want to get in touch with you directly. We can even throw in a third link for the book so that people know how to find it. Well, again, thank you so much for giving us such great advice and really getting into the details of what we need to be thinking about when it comes to SEO, LLM search, GEO, AEO. We can keep on throwing acronyms out and this whole new world that we're trying to deal with, while also realizing that we still have to maintain our brand authority, credibility, transparency, and our genuine voices.
I love how you tie that up so nicely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it. I'll be back again with another amazing guest tomorrow, or if it's the weekend, on Monday. And with that, thank you again for coming here, watching, listening. Please leave us a rating review. It really helps with our discoverability. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.